Great. What's up?
Hey.
Hi. All right. Shoot.
So, the first question I've kind of been asking people is, what's your method for composing what you think is the perfect superhero sound or the perfect superhero score for a movie?
I don't know. I tend to not look at them as superhero movies. I look at them as just stories about people that end up in these crazy situations, but always I never lose sight of the fact that they are people and they have emotional issues and problems, and they feel things and they want things, and they, to me it's like always about that. I almost never think about the fact that it is a superhero film. And I learned this pretty early on when I was doing Star Trek. Because I remember when I first started writing on Star Trek, the very first themes I was writing was, I'm writing Star Trek themes. I'm writing, and I wasn't really thinking about the fact, and nothing I wrote felt right to me. I kept going. I did like 18 versions, and I was just like, this is all terrible. It doesn't feel right to me, And I remember sitting with Damon Lindelof, who I also worked with on Lost, and he's done a lot of different things. And Damon and I were sitting there, and he goes, how about, let's just forget the fact that it's a space movie, forget it's Star Trek, forget Captain, just write a theme for two people that meet and become the best of friends and end up going on these wonderful adventures together. I'm like, all right, and so I wrote that theme, and that was the one that ended up in the film, and so you learn very quickly, not to forget the fact that these are about people, no matter if it's a rat cooking, no matter if it's, The Incredibles, they have to be treated all as people. And when you do that, the audience can connect, in the way that I connect to the stories.
I've never heard that before. That's just totally fascinating. For some reason, I never thought about that. But yeah, that would make sense. We are humans. We have to connect as humans.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Turn those characters, no matter what they are, into somebody we can relate to.
Yeah, there's no way to understand or relate to somebody that comes from another planet and has lived this life. I can't relate to Superman. I don't know what that's like being with that. You know what I mean? But we do know what it's like to be lonely. We do understand that we can relate to somebody who is on this planet who really has no friends to speak of outside a very small circle of people and can't tell anyone about who he is. Think about how hard that would be. And that's where I go when I'm working on these things. What's happening inside of those characters.
Funny thing is, I really don't have a question because Star Trek Into the Darkness is my favorite movie. The score is absolutely my favorite score of all time. And
awesome.
Literally, I listen to it at least religiously, at least once a week, the whole time.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just amazing how, without even seeing the movie, that I can listen to the score and absolutely capture exactly what's happening and the dynamics of it, and even workout music. Even sometimes where I could just throw up an extra set because, the dynamics up and down. It's just amazing.
I love that. What I loved as a kid in listening to soundtracks was the fact that I could. Because when I was a kid, we didn't have DVDs, or we didn't have VHS or any of that. So the only way to relive the experience in the theater that I just came home from was to go buy the soundtrack and listen to it. And I would, every night, that's what I would listen to at night. I put a speaker underneath my pillow and I would just listen to those soundtracks and I would relive the movie. And I feel like that influenced me so much as to how I work today. It's about creating sort of a storytelling soundscape that if you listen to it, hopefully, and you saw the movie and you listen to it afterwards, you're like, oh yeah, this feels like the arc and the story of the film. That's what I'm always trying to do.
And I think another thing you do really good is that your scores are timeless. No matter what, they just continuously feel absolutely refreshing, and the excitement grows again to say, like, I freaking love this movie.
Oh, that's great.
It's really powerful stuff.
I'm glad. Well, I attribute a lot of that also to the fact that, working with live musicians is the best. And that is the thing that will create a timeless sort of feel for you because, it's not to say you can't use synthesizers and different things to accent or to make certain sounds that you want that don't exist in a real orchestra. I love doing that too. But I don't like substituting fake strings for real strings, that to me, because then you're losing so much soul when you do that. And what you're hearing when you listen is the hearts and souls of 100 people sitting in a room together, playing their hearts out. Like, and that comes across. And yeah, so live musicians, the best.
So we're with Jurassic Outpost, and we would be remiss if we didn't ask you some questions about Fallen Kingdom. So can you talk a little bit about what it was like to kind of inherit the duties of composing from a franchise that's as historic and iconic as Jurassic Park?
Well, I remember early on when I first met with Colin about it, he was like, we don't have to adhere to everything that came before, you know, do whatever you want, because it should have its own theme. And then when we need to, we'll dip into what came before when it's appropriate. Because I don't like it when films just blanket use tons of stuff from the previous versions of these things, because they don't fit. It doesn't really fit right. So you have to make sure whatever you're doing fits the story. So I had a lot of freedom in that realm, and I did want it to feel like a big Jurassic Park movie. So there are certain elements that I incorporated to make sure that was there. But thematically, everyone got all new themes, and those were the things that you hear in the film. And then in those little moments when you hear the old Jurassic Park stuff, then it means something. It's not like just slathered everywhere, you know, where suddenly it doesn't mean anything anymore when you hear it 10 times. You're just like, I don't care. But if you save it for the right moment, then suddenly you're crying and you're like, oh my God, what is going on? What is happening?
The Brachiosaur scene.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just instant tears.
Yeah.
Instant. And the score goes right along.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, saving it for those moments, and to, you know, because that's how I felt when I watched it. And I was just like, okay, I want the audience to feel how I felt when I watch this thing. So that's what I usually go with.
Did you see a big creative difference between Colin and J.A. Bayona when you were working with both of them?
Yeah, they're very different filmmakers. Very different. And I've actually been friends with J.A. for, like, I don't know, 15, 17 years.
Oh, yeah.
We met at a film music festival in Spain, and we became great friends. And we hadn't worked with each other, but we've been friends for years, always waiting for something that would come up that would make sense to work on together. And then this happened, and I was like, oh, this is great. So we had a blast. Where I love working with him. He loves gothic horror movies and monster movies, and I do too. So I really wanted to bring a lot of that into this to make it feel different from the last movie. So, you know, the Indoraptor gets this crazy, insane theme, which is really fun to develop. But I think with these movies, you have to start taking them different places. You can't just do the same thing over and over, or what's the point, you know? So who knows what's going to happen on the next one.
Any chance we see you back with Doctor Strange?
Well, I love Doctor Strange. He's always been one of my favorite characters, and you know, and I have a very close relationship with everyone over there at Marvel. So you know, it would definitely be on my to-do list.
All right.
Yes.
Book it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Great talking to you.